producer, Finola Dwyer, novelist, Colin Toybeen, leading lady, Saoirse Ronan, director, John Crowley, and screenwriter, Nick Hornby. Lovely to see you all here. Thank you, and thank you for an absolutely beautiful film. Now, Finola, this is a very universal story, but I think in the genesis of this becoming a film, that it was also something deeply personal to you. Was that right?
Yeah, absolutely was. I read the novel very early after it came out. I absolutely loved it. It was my mother's story, my story, and over time, the more I thought about it, I thought actually it's a very universal story. It's so many people's stories that you end up living somewhere other than where you grew up.
Short and sweet.
No, I can keep going further.
Thank you. Colin, what was your biggest anxiety, if you had one, about the book's translation into a film?
I think there were the world she navigates, that Saoirse navigates in the book, is one, or Eilish, is where so many people are so kind to her in one way and so unpleasant to her in others, and that I suppose. That amount of flavour that comes in the book from tricks of speech, from all that way in which someone's face moves, that was something that I think the picture captures better than the book in certain ways. Where someone like Bridge Brennan, the minute she appears, it would take a novelist 5 pages to get that level of bitterness, nastiness, unpleasantness, and pure determination. Whereas Bridge just turns her face and you get it. So, that sort of thing, it's amazing to watch somebody being able to do in a second what it would take me 2 weeks and with a lot of erasure.
Thank you. Saoirse, we think of you as a bit more sophisticated and certainly better traveled than Eilish, but you were at that exact right age of transitioning from adolescence into a young woman. And of course you have connections with Ireland and New York, but was there some particular thing that really connected you, or really that you really responded to in her above all else?
Yeah, I really do feel the weight that you experience, the heaviness that you experience when you're homesick, and you leave home for the first time and haven't quite settled anywhere and are sort of floating between these 2 different places, and you can't quite go back to where you're from, but you're not quite settled in this place that you're moving towards either. And there is definitely that sense of loss and vulnerability, I think, and you don't really know when that's going to be lifted. And from the time that I had met John initially to discuss the script to when we actually made the film, which was a year later, I had moved away, and so I was right in the middle of that feeling and the heaviness that Colin and Nick describe so well through their writing, So I guess you can kind of liken it to reading a book or listening to a piece of music or watching a film yourself that just completely speaks to you, and for whatever reason you feel like you're going to be connected to it for life. That's how it felt sort of with every scene that we shot, and that was quite unusual for me to not be able to turn off my emotions at the end of the day, Wow,
thank you. John, after your extensive theatre career, I imagine working with actors is meat and drink to you, and that wasn't the big daunting thing, but even though, of course, you've worked on screen before and with distinction, this is a huge thing, shooting in 3 countries with a transatlantic cast and recreating another era. What was the biggest challenge for you?
Well, just what you say, which is 3 countries. It's true, because we essentially had 3 crews. So we had a core crew, which remained the same. But Saoirse was the only actor who, was consistent to the whole thing. So in a strange way, the shoot had sort of multiple personalities. The Irish section was very distinct in its own way, and then the Montreal section was its own thing, and then the New York one was its own way. So it was kind of appropriate for what she goes through, which is, but we were, shooting out of order, and that was challenging when you're trying to do something which is a very subtle transformation from a rather pale young girl into a rather beautiful young woman who's very sure of what she's about, or is arriving into what she's about by the end of the story. And judging all of that out of order, trying to make sure that all the pieces of the mosaic would be right to be laid out, took a bit of thought.
Thank you. Nick, you're not Irish and you're not a girl, but my goodness. You're on a roll writing good women's roles. What particularly sort of sang to you? What element did you most want to focus on?
Well, I saw the chance to produce a screenplay that was extremely beautiful and sort of classic, I suppose, and that sort of thing doesn't come along every day. And also, there was wonderful minor characters, which is something that I look for, and this enormous technical challenge of persuading people that actually Ailish is properly split, and that was an enormously interesting thing to try and convey.
Thank you. Okay, let's open it up. Now, we've got microphones. Who has it? Okay, 1, 2, somebody over 3, and we'll start there. Okay, go ahead. Hi.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me? I can't tell.
Yes.
This is a question for Saoirse. Sorry, first of all, I'm a UK freelance. And I'd just like to put to you that dating in the 50s was just about the polar opposite to what it is in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And would you like to...
It is all right.
Eh?
It is all right.
I mean, would you like to see a return to that sort of quite old-fashioned romance, a charm to it, but also quite buttoned up? Or do you think, in the busy world that we live in, that dating apps, websites, and social media is the romantic way forward?
You mean in real life, not in film?
In real life, no, not in movies.
To be honest, I think it's a very personal thing. You know, people can get quite judgmental about, or prejudice even, to how other people find each other and develop relationships. And it is scary that technology is kind of taken over as much as it is. It's become part of every aspect of communication, which is kind of terrifying. I think the thing that, and it's really a personal choice to just kind of make a point of focusing on the person that's right in front of you, this physical thing that's right in front of you, instead of looking at a screen. And for me, that's very important for me. I think the romantic side of courting, and kind of, we see with Ailish and Tony that they have to follow certain steps. One leads on to the next thing, and leads on to the next thing, and leads on to marriage, and leads on to sex, and leads on to babies, and all that sort of stuff. And there is a beautiful kind of romanticism to that, and knowing that you have to sort of follow this along the way, even though you've got this bubbling excitement and chemistry and all these different feelings underneath the surface. So I think there's something quite exciting about that. But I think it's a very personal thing for everyone,
Here, please.
So I suppose this is for Colm and John and Nick and maybe all of you. When I read the book, I personally, this might just be me, but I personally felt much more drawn to, if I was Ailish, I would feel much more drawn to Brooklyn than to Ireland. But in the movie, I felt like it was much more, I was much more torn. I was sitting there and I was thinking, well, because I feel like in the movie, okay, I can go on, I won't. But I was just wondering if it was intentional that you worked to make the movie more, you worked to make the Irish part of her life more attractive, or if that sort of came naturally, that you tried to balance it.
Well, no, we did work very hard for that, and all the way right through the edit to try and balance those two elements, because that's why you have a film, and that sort of conflict it's either very sharp in a film, or else it would be rather flat. And if it's tilted in one direction, it wouldn't work as well as drama. And I always had a secret wish for one outcome, but you have to sort of put that away somehow. What was your wish? I'm not telling you.
And John and I had the same wish.
No, it felt the film, you know, tips our hat in that direction. I mean, I felt that she did the right thing to go back to America, but our task, and Donal was really helpful with this actually when he came on board, and it was to make sure that you know what's a rather odd thing to do, which is to get you to invest in a relationship romantically for the first hour of a film, and then to park it, and then say, now here's this other guy. And to get to an equal place of investment with a sort of shorthand in sort of 3, maybe 4 scenes, which Nick did so deftly, without an audience going, God, she's a cow. You know, that is somehow how you know how to get that and feel her dilemma was the task. You know, so yeah, believe me, that took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah.
Opinion is really divided. I mean, it isn't as though if someone reads the book, everybody has the same view. I mean, they really don't. The thing that I felt mattered is the wedding scene. Is the scene where you see them in the. Now I've started to think about it as a film rather than a book. But in the book, it's quite important that they're actually with their families in the local church watching a wedding. And you can see what's going through her mind. This could be me. I could be enclosed by all these people who love me, by this community I know, and this would mean something to me, rather than being alone in a world I don't know. And for those pages, I think certainly there are a lot of readers think, oh, she's going to do anything to stay, you know. And then the other thing happens. But you know, it isn't as though every reader has the same response to the book.
I think, sorry, I was just going to say, I think when you're reading the book and you see how little is left in the book, when she meets Jim, you think there is no way that I'm going to be persuaded that she should stay in Ireland. And Colum's extraordinary achievement is that in the little space that he has left in the book, he persuades us that they are viable alternatives to each other. And like John said, the real technical challenge, when you're writing a screenplay and making a movie, the few pages that Colum gave himself are actually reduced way beyond that even. And we had to find, all of us, me and John and Donal, a way of presenting Donal, Jim, as a proper suitor for Saoirse.
Lady here needs the mic. Thank you.
Hello, French web critic. I have a question for you, John and Saoirse, about the light and the costumes, which are really beautiful, especially the yellow dress. I wanted to know, how did you work, John, on the costumes, the fashion of this time, to be able to see the difference between Ireland fashion, Brooklyn, and you, Saoirse, what was your relationship with these costumes? So this fashion, do you want to keep dressed like that?
Well, Odile Dix-Miro, who did the costumes beautifully, you know, didn't need to be taught how to do her job. I mean, my one thing that I kept stressing was they had to be clothes, not costumes, because you're dealing with a period which, especially in the American side, where pop culture was just beginning to sort of take hold of people who had a little bit of disposable income, i.e. the girls in the boarding house, right? So there was a little bit of fun that could be had there, but it was very important in the first section that it actually be held in a very tight rein, colours and the nature of the costumes, in order that when Saoirse comes back for the third section, it's a bit like one of the Kennedys returning home to Ireland, that there's, you know, with just one extra dress maybe and a hairdress, that there's a sense of glamour about her, but that it must be a real person who's seen the movies as opposed to looking like a movie. So that was always the sort of guiding star for us, was realism, you know.
And there's a confidence as well that she holds with these clothes, I think, when she comes back. And that's what I noticed when I watched the film. I mean, Odile and I mapped everything out, and it was very much down to her, kind of, you know, where we took it. But I think, you know, the great thing about our whole team was that everyone approached it in a very similar way, and someone described it the other day as quite a delicate film. And I think that even with the progress when it comes to her look. It's all quite delicate and it's all quite gradual, and it's only really when she goes back to Ireland that we see suddenly how much, you know, pop colours she's wearing in her clothes, and she has sunglasses on. And I even remember when I was younger, I wouldn't wear I had to think about sunglasses where I thought, oh no, that's too flashy at home, you know, maybe just because the sun doesn't exist at home. We don't need sunglasses. But that's a very confident thing, you know. You need to be able to hold yourself in order to wear those kind of outfits. And so we had mapped that out. And, you know, I'm always very drawn to greens and blues, and I always thought that was quite important because it suited me, but also it represented kind of the journey that she had gone on with, you know, I just like the idea of it representing land and water and all that sort of stuff. And so we worked in that way with the colour palette as well. But also what was so lovely, Odile and I loved this, is that, you know, the 50s outfits were so womanly, and it encouraged women, as opposed to now, it encouraged women to have curves and a bum and boobs and all that stuff. And we don't, you know, girls are so strongly encouraged to be almost waif-like now and not have any shape at all. And at that time, it was healthier, you know. So it was great for all the girls to have like proper bras and a big skirt, and you know, it definitely put you into that that mindset of a woman in the 50s.
I hope you kept that green swimsuit. That's a knockout.
I mean.